I'm Dean. I'm the dad.
I'm Laura. I'm the mom.
And I'm Krysta, and I'm the daughter.
And together we are
Family
Plot. And gee, that was nice. We got all that together. Welcome to the show. If you want to help us out, let's start with the housekeeping first. If you want to help us out, you can do that a few ways. First, there's Patreon. Patreon lets you support us with a monthly donation. 1, 3, 5, and 10 are the levels. You can join one of 3 teams: Team Bunny, Team Podcast, Team Electric Bill. Doesn't really matter there, though all the money goes to the same place. Feed the bunny and pay the electric bill, really. Also, if you can't do a monthly donation, you can certainly help us out with Buy Me a Coffee, which is any whole dollar amount one time. And if you can't do that, well, we understand. We've been without money most of our time together.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you enjoy the show, share it on social media. If not, keep it to yourself. There you go. See, Krista's with us. Now, let's get into what the show's about. Tonight, we go to what used to be called the Dark Continent, Africa. And it was not called that for any racist reason, at least near as I could tell. It was called that because it was a place of mystery. As we go in search of a cryptid that may be part of a residual species of dinosaurs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Y'all have
The Mokele-Mbembe. We will first investigate the history of the gorilla, which was once a cryptid in its own right, and then we get into the Mokele-Mbembe, the history of its sightings and discovery and evidence and everything else we can dig up in this cryptid episode of the Family Plot Podcast. Now, normally it would be time for Krista's Corner, but Krista's not feeling so well today, so she's begged off her corner, and we have said, sure, fine, that's okay. You don't have to have a corner today.
You can hide in your corner. You don't have to talk about it today. That's what we'll do.
I can hide.
In my own little corner, in my own little chair, as Cinderella said in Rodgers and Hmmerstein, Cinderella.
Rodgers and Hmmerstein did Cinderella?
They sure did.
Cool.
With Leslie played Miss Scarlet in Clue.
Leslie Warren.
Yes, Leslie Warren was Cinderella. A very, very young Leslie Warren.
I was going to say, because Leslie Warren got to looking kind of severe.
Yeah, she was very young. She was probably in her teens. It was a special on TV, I think. I think they did like a, kind of like they've gone in and done Hairspray and those different things. They released it as a special musical performance on television. And she was Cinderella, and the gentleman who played the prince was an actor on a soap opera, and it was very, Ginger, I believe Ginger Rodgers played the queen.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, the only thing I remember like that was Meredith Baxter Birney and David Birney, her husband, playing in a play based off of Mark Twain's Adam and Eve. And like for the fruit of knowledge, they used an apple, but it wasn't on a tree. It was on a single ionic column.
Mm-hmm. See, Ginger Rodgers was the queen. Walter Pidgeon was the king. Celeste Holm was the fairy godmother. Jo Van Fleet was the stepmother. Stuart Damon was the prince. And there's Leslie Warren as the...
Wow, that is a young Leslie Warren.
Yeah.
That's very young.
Yep, she was very young. It's excellent, though. If you haven't ever seen it, you should see it.
And that almost looked like Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, no, I don't believe Angela Lansbury is in there, but it was released on February 22nd, 1965. So probably sweeps for 1965. Television sweeps for 1965.
Yep.
So, and my parents, my mom and stepfather took us to Starlight to see it performed live when I was a little girl. So, it's a beautiful rendition of the classic story. I really enjoy it. So,
cool.
So since we don't have a Krista's Corner today, I just kind of went off on the rails there, but I think it was an interesting use of our time.
Always is.
Me going off on the rails? Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so
we begin today discussing the gorilla. Now, the gorilla was first described by the Greek explorer Hanno, who described creatures that many think...
Can I just ask real quick before we get too deep into the history of the gorilla? So are we discussing this because it's specifically connected to the Mokele-Mbembe... Mokele-Mbembe. See, I'm going to spend this entire episode butchering that, and I am so sorry to anyone who specifically follows this.
Okay, so here's the thing. We're talking about the gorilla because we know the gorillas are real. We know they're real animals, and they exist.
Yeah.
But for hundreds of years, they were thought to be cryptids. Like the same arguments people use about Bigfoots, well, why haven't we found any bodies, blah, 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 were the same arguments they used to argue against the existence of the gorilla. And as we know today, gorillas are quite real creatures. So this is just my way of reminding people that listen that you may not believe in cryptids, but wasn't everything a cryptid once upon a time?
I like that. I like that direction of it. Okay, see, that's what I was trying to see, your bigger picture, your vision, and now I am with you, and that makes total sense. So
right. Perfect. And I picked the gorilla because it dwells in Africa, as does the Mokele-Mbembe.
Sure, absolutely.
Now, the gorilla was first described by a Greek explorer, Hanno, Hanno, who described creatures that many think these days were baboons and chimpanzees, but he called them gorilla. Or maybe it's pronounced gorilla. It's gorilla, but with an extra E at the end.
Gotcha.
Now, that was, like I said, that was about 5th century. That was a while ago. And I don't know what Hanno was doing in Africa.
It was a minute ago.
Yeah. So next time they enter the conversation, so to speak, we're going to go from there to 1600. Andrew Battle, a well-known pirate, convict, merchant, and sailor. Boy, you couldn't get 4 different jobs like that today. Back then, it was kind of,
Yeah. That was like a life path, right?
Yeah. But he was a well-known character of the time, and he told stories of wild men that he called monsters that would visit his camp after he left each morning. They were fascinated by his fire, but he pointed out that they didn't seem to know what to do to make the fire last.
Interesting.
Which, while there is some tool use amongst gorillas and chimps, because they are our closest relatives, fire building is probably not within their sphere of influence.
We hope.
Now, by this point in history, claims like these were being mocked and ridiculed, and many people were talking about it. If such creatures existed, we would have found their remains, much like they do about Bigfoot and that. So, which is weird to me, because around this time, people are also talking about witches and having this is still 100 plus years before the Salem witch trials. So, the very fact that people are like, oh, well, let's poo-poo this gorilla thing, but those witches, burn them. Well, then came 1847, when missionary and doctor Thomas Savage, who is no relation to Clark Savage, also known as Doc Savage, Man of Bronze, the pulp hero.
Never heard of him.
You've never heard of Doc Savage?
Nope.
Oh my God. Doc Savage actually, in a way, is who Superman was cribbed off of.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not. Sorry.
Doc Savage was a pulp hero, right? And he had 4 different aides. Now, Doc Savage was he has this keen scientific mind. He's a natural athlete, a gifted combatant, a natural marksman.
Cool.
And he's got 4 lieutenants that work with him. Monk Mayfair. Monk was the big, strong one, kind of the Ben Grimm of his time.
I see.
And then Monk was always bumping up against. Oh God, I can't remember, but there was Long Tom because this guy who used basically a student's cannon called a Long Tom to fight off some people years ago or something. I can't remember all their names, but these guys were astounding in their fields, and then they would get together and help Doc Savage fight crime. Well, Doc Savage, his first name is Clark. Clark Kent's first name is Clark. Doc Savage was the Man of Bronze. Clark Kent's the Man of Steel. There's a lot of things that sort of tie them together, so that some people think that Doc Savage was the blueprint that Clark Kent was created with.
I see.
So anyway, but this Thomas Savage, no relation to Clark Savage at all, which would be hard because, Doc Savage was a pulp hero, so not real.
Yeah.
But he discovered some gorilla bones in Liberia, which is still a country, by the way. Mm-hmm. He, along with Harvard anatomist Jeffries Wyman, submitted their thoughts and notes about the creature that they dubbed gorilla, and that's its scientific name, is gorilla.
I see.
Even so, the mountain gorilla remained a cryptid until 1902, when it was identified by German Captain Robert von Berigny. And so that mountain gorillas are referred to as Gorilla Berigny.
I see. Even though other people had found them, but they weren't approved and considered real until 1902?
Basically, yes.
I see.
So,
in other words, Dr. Savage just kind of got, pardon my French, screwed on the whole situation.
No, because he and Jeffries Wyman, they dubbed one version of the creature the gorilla, but it wasn't a mountain gorilla.
I see.
That one is Gorilla Brigny. But yeah, it was their decision not to name it some version of their own name, like Gorilla Savage.
No, but it's like it wasn't official. It wasn't considered an official creature. It was still considered a cryptid, is what I'm saying.
Well, the mountain gorilla was.
Science didn't approve it until 1902.
Right, but that's a mountain gorilla, which is a different species.
I see.
But, and see, that's the part that gets me, is that by 1847, they know there's a gorilla. They know it. They absolutely know. So 1902, that the fact there's, this mountain gorilla is clearly a figment of people's imagination.
No. Right? Sure.
It's just a different version of the regular gorilla. And so, but even so, like I said, it was considered a cryptid. It was a species people thought existed, but no one could prove it. And so science was like, well, until we prove it, it doesn't exist. Ha ha ha.
That's so silly, but I guess that is kind of how our human world works, which is why we say so often that there are things out there that we don't understand, or, but...
Right. And so that's why I wanted to dig into the gorilla first, because it lives in Africa. It has a long history of being considered a cryptid. And really, we didn't discover bones for them until 1847.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back, they were described around the year 500. That's a long time to go without bones.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this is what I when people talk about, well, if Bigfoot exists, how come we haven't found a dead one?
Yeah, kind of. Sure, absolutely.
And that ignores that in between these two men, there was another guy that went around trying to capture gorillas so that they could be examined either shortly after being dead or while still alive. I couldn't make that out from the description of
that you found.
Yeah. So, but science hasn't always been pretty. So,
well, that is true. A lot of science isn't pretty, but I digress. So, with that in mind, let's take a look into the Mokele-Mbembe. I cannot say Mokele-Mbembe, apparently. It's causing me issues. So, the name Mokele-Mbembe, I said it that time.
You said it the time before, too. Let's give you credit for credit where it's due.
I just stumbled. Is Lingala, a Bantu language for one who stops the flow of rivers. That's kind of lyrical. That's a nice name. Because the creature supposedly prefers nesting in the bends of rivers. According to a missionary who lived in the area for over 10 years, Mokele-Mbembe also means rainbow and mystery. The creature has been described by those who have seen it as being huge in size, with a long tail, a long neck with a small head. The beast has been described as being 35 feet long, with greenish brown skin and a long, flexible apatosaurus, or a long flexible neck. Often it's drawn as what used to be called a brontosaurus, though it's known as an apatosaurus these days. So we kind of our own little current version of Big Bronto hanging out in the middle of Africa is what we're talking about?
Right.
All right. Good deal. According to some stories, the Mokele-Mbembe dwells near caves where its favorite food, a specific kind of vine, is said to grow. Some claim it feeds on, or at least kills, hippos, elephants, and crocodiles. According to some stories, the creature is very defensive and has a single horn on its head that it uses to kill elephants. While some other stories claim that it is a spiritual being rather than a physical one. So there's a lot of stories going around about this creature.
Which is true of any cryptid in Africa.
Sure.
Because, I mean, you have so many tribes living in those areas. And those tribes, a lot of them go back, way back in history. At least the ones that have managed to avoid contact with the European peoples.
Right.
Because a lot of times what would happen in Europe, especially colonial African, was split up by the Europeans, and the maps were drawn by people with literally no idea of who lived where, who liked who hated who. And so tribes that were at war could suddenly be thrown into the same country.
Right.
And colonialism is never good. I mean, it looks like, wow, you're really helping these people, but you're not. You're not. It's never a good thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of stories because the area where they're seen, there's a lot of different people that live there. I mean, we're talking about the Congo Basin here. And there are a lot of tribes that make their living in the Congo Basin.
Fair enough.
And there's a lot of ways to die in the Congo Basin, too.
Yeah. I think Africa is just kind of known for that.
Like, Africa is one of those places where you can come around a corner and see a, full-grown lion. And they don't look like they do in the zoo. In the zoo, they're laying down, it's hot, they're dusty. No. You see one out in the wild, and it's like, I could eat you. And I just might. And something about that raw interaction scares humans to death. So let's talk some sightings. Our sightings begin in 1776 when George Washington first found one on the new continent of America. No. Sorry.
No.
Our sightings do begin in 1776 by French missionary Leven Bonaventure Proyart. He was in the Congo River Basin and discovered an animal's footprint over 1 meter in size. That's 3.28 feet in English measurements.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's definitely not from a big kitty.
No, that's big. That's not even from an elephant.
Yeah, that's a big foot.
In 1909, so we're jumping ahead a whole lot of years.
120.
Lieutenant Paul Gatz described a creature similar to the Mokele-Mbembe called the Nsanga. Now, this is the first time the Mokele-Mbembe is described as something as resembling a dinosaur. And since then, it has been described as some kind of dinosaur.
Ever since.
Right. Around the same time, Carl Hagenbeck, famed German big game hunter, talked about a creature that the locals described as half elephant and half dragon, which, if you look at an apatosaurus, would be an apt description of one by people that aren't used to seeing it. And this creature lives in the swamps of Rhodesia. Now, Rhodesia was an unrecognized state that once occupied the area known as Zimbabwe. He reasoned that if such a creature once existed, it must exist still. So he sent several men to the Rhodesian swamps to locate the creature, but they were forced to return without finding further evidence of it. As of 2011, over 50 expeditions have been organized to find the creature, all without success. The best evidence we have consists of footprints, fuzzy photographs, and eyewitness accounts. Not exactly what you'd call indisputable evidence. Retired Chicago biologist Roy Mackle participated in 2 of these searches and saw footprints roughly equivalent with the one sawn by Proyart, but no other sign of the creature could be found. So that's not a lot to go on, but again...
But I mean, we are talking about Africa. It's in some areas, it's still very wild and very difficult to traverse, and even people who live there go missing and die just trying to travel from one place to another. It's still a very dangerous country in some areas, and still very wild in some areas.
Yes. And in fact, a lot of the cities, the modern cities, still aren't great places to live. Like, a lot of the populace lives in what are essentially huts built out of, what do you call those?
Like shipping crates.
No.
Metal.
They're like bricks, but they're gray. They got usually like 2 holes in them. They're the
cinder blocks?
Yes, cinder blocks. These huts are entirely made out of cinder blocks. No running water, no electricity.
Yeah. That would be rough. That would be a rough existence. So, but I'm too soft for that life. I'm glad that I don't live in that kind of hut, because I don't think I would do very well. So there are a lot of theories, obviously, when we talk about any creatures like this. There are theories that people have come up with over the years. Some theories that people have come up with for the creature include that they are that they are a remnant population. According to this theory, the Mokele-Mbembe is a relic population of some kind of dinosaur, possibly an apatosaurus or something similar. They attribute the deaths of other animals to territoriality.
Right, that it would be very territorial.
Did I say that word right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Territoriality.
That's a really big word for me this late in the day, so I apologize if I...
But yeah, so that's one theory, is that it's some kind of dinosaur that's lived on into the world. My problem with this theory, though, is you're talking about a creature that's 35 meters long. Now, true, it's brown and green, so it would be naturally camouflaged, especially if it's in the water.
Yeah.
But...
yeah, I mean... But I mean, they say all the time that they think that there's whole things that we don't know anything about, and I mean, it definitely makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, if it's anywhere, Africa is a good guess. But
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so that's a possibility,
sure. But
it's a difficult sell, at least to me. But then again, you look at Gustav, that giant, was a crocodile or an alligator that lived in a lake in Africa, and they tried to catch it on a PBS special, and the thing was able to get away from this massive trap they constructed for it with little or no problem. And that thing's huge.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you are, nothing around you is any kind of a threat to you.
Yes.
So that's definitely one theory. A second theory is that it's completely made up. According to this theory, the Mokele-Mbembe is either a tribal memory of a creature they used to encounter, which is not unheard of among indigenous peoples of Africa, or a made-up creature that serves some function in tribal storytelling. Proponents of this theory point to the suggestions that the beast may be a spirit animal, which comes from the local tribesmen.
I see the point in this, but one, it's not made up if it's a tribal memory, and two,
there's a lot of reports of it from people from different countries. Is
right.
What makes me feel like that is not necessarily a fair theory, because there are so many people from Germany, England, Chicago. I mean, people all over that we've had these reports. So that just seems like you're reaching too hard.
Right. And while it could be there was once a remnant population that no longer exists, which is why they say it's a spirit animal now, because a lot of tribes, like, things don't die. They just sort of become spirits.
Fair enough.
So I see that, but that doesn't make it made up. That makes it more recently extinct than we thought.
Oh, fair enough. So the third theory would be the misidentified creature theory. And you actually think this is the most probable.
No, I think it's the least probable.
Oh, the least probable. So the mic we added just so we are ticking all the boxes. So according to this theory, locals have misidentified some creature or several creatures as the Mokele-Mbembe. The people who subscribe to this theory point at the fact that watering holes draw lots of animals from herbivores to predators. Seeing them in close proximity, the theory goes the viewer gets confused and combines the features of several different animals into one species. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, see, that's why I think it's the lead, because you're talking. Most of the people that talk about this creature are indigenous people, and to suggest that they don't know what things are living in their neighborhood—that's
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not like you took them and dropped them in Utah, and they started identifying things there. Yeah. No, this is something that lives essentially in their backyard.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And if you're going to say, well, they just didn't identify it correctly, I think you're an idiot.
That's like saying we can't tell you what a raccoon is by seeing it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You know, I mean, you know what lives in your neighborhood for the most part. Sure. You know, there are some animals that are better at hiding than others. Right. Like Lexi here lately has been watching this English guy that finds newts and things, and she just thinks that's fascinating. And I probably wouldn't be able to identify a newt that was raised around here, but this isn't a newt. It's a creature that sources say is about 35 feet long. What are you putting together to create this misidentification?
Yeah. And how are that many animals standing together without, eating one another? That doesn't make any sense here. I'm with you 100% on that. So, and the final theory is that it's just a new creature that, according to skeptics, that it's some relatively newly evolved creature that is incredibly good at hiding, though with greenish brown skin, that definitely would make sense that it would blend into its surroundings.
Right.
Absolutely.
Skeptics say that one's the least likely evolved just because it's too big to have evolved in our lifetime. Personally, I included it because I found it, not because I agree with it. I think, honestly, if it's not a remnant population, it once was, is my best thought, is that it may no longer exist, but it did up to a point.
Sure.
But because I just don't see it being a misidentified creature, not with as many people that, have seen it.
Sure.
And I certainly don't think it's made up. It's not like, these tribes are going to get anything out of hoaxing a monster. They just don't work like that. So,
yeah, I mean, that's not generally something that most indigenous people are looking for, to bring other outside people into their area because of something that they found.
Right. And and I don't have it in here. I should point out that Josh Gates went looking for the Mokele-Mbembe at one point.
Josh Gates?
Yeah.
Why, I'm not sure we've ever talked about Josh Gates before on this show.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure either. But Josh...
Your man crush.
It was back in his Destination Truth days. And he didn't find any evidence of it, but he pointed out that, they had very little time. They had like 2 or 3 locations that they could check out. Mm-hmm. And they saw animal sign, but
sure,
they don't know the area, so they wouldn't be able to tell if it's a Mokele-Mbembe from a big gator or something.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that would make it really difficult. It would. To be fair, I feel like I owe you a little bit of an apology for that, because on my social media this week, I was in one of my groups. I'm a member of multiple different groups for different reasons, and one of my groups, somebody was talking about his wife had got him tickets to go to a Josh Gates experience near where they live, and he got to go and he got to see Josh talk about stuff. So you are not the only one with a man crush on Mr. Gates. So
and I don't have tickets to this.
I know I'm gonna have to look into that, but I have a feeling they're probably way out of our price range.
Probably, but
I'll definitely keep my thoughts on it for sure. So
let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors.
I feel sponsored.
Yay!
A little confused because sponsors usually come much earlier in the show, but it's a different night here, so we'll roll it out.
Well, the next thing up is our summary, our final thoughts, and I have, unusual for me, I know, I have a lot to say.
Oh, okay. You have a lot. Shocked, really.
So here's the thing. I have looked at the Mokele-Mbembe for a long time. Not even just as... It was one of those cryptids that always fascinated me because
you're a little boy and you like dinosaurs.
Its description at the time was consistent with a brontosaurus. Right. Now, we know the brontosaurus doesn't exist. Like, what we thought was a brontosaurus was the wrong head on the wrong body, and the creature is actually an apatosaurus, which has a bit different head. Yeah. It's more crested.
Right.
And this creature that they're talking about doesn't have a crest, but apparently it has some kind of horn. So it's probably some relative of the apatosaurus if it's real. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to insist. But certainly, I would say that something like that probably inhabited the area once upon a time.
Sure.
Because some things make sense to me, like the idea of it nesting at bends of rivers.
Well, yeah.
Because... Water, for one thing. Mm-hmm. Food, food for another, and an easily defensible area.
Yeah.
And the very fact that it would defend itself against hippos is not unreasonable, because hippos are one of the more dangerous animals in Africa.
They are. Yeah, I've heard that quite a few times, actually.
Because they're so territorial. Mm-hmm. It's not that they're hungry for human flesh. They're just territorial. And if you get in their territory, they want you out and they're willing to hurt you. Also, at night, they tend to be on land. Like, they stay in water during the day, but they'll come out at night and get on land. And you do not want to be in the way of one as it goes charging back for the water. It can hurt. It's like getting run over by a car.
Yeah. Or, a semi.
Yeah, but one that specifically doesn't like you.
Yeah, specifically.
Yeah. So, which is weird, because if you go to the Kansas City Zoo, which I have, towards closing time, and you're over near the hippo enclosure, you'll see the zookeeper that works with them. She'll step out of their little house, and she'll make a noise, and those hippos will charge up this little concourse to her, and they'll stop, and they'll let her love on them and nuzzle her, and then go into their little enclosure. But it was scary to me to see those things move, because they can hustle.
Yeah.
And so, if this creature ever did live in the bend of a river, it would encounter hippos, and they wouldn't want it there, and it wouldn't want them there. So it was big enough to kill a hippo?
Might have to.
Yeah. So, and the very fact that even Josh said, I didn't find anything, but Africa's a big place, and I wasn't able to look in all the places.
Sure.
His best guess is that it's a tribal memory, and maybe it is. But if so, that means it was real once.
Fair enough.
So, what's my thought? My thought is there was a remnant population once upon a time. I doubt there is any longer, just because it's been so long since anybody has seen one.
Well, yeah, because the latest date that we had in the research that we talked about was 2011. That was the absolute latest date, right? So that's still 12 years. That's still over a decade ago.
Right, but I know them, like the two that the Chicago only ever turned up footprints, and I have no idea how old they are.
Sure.
Yeah. So, we find dinosaur footprints from time to time.
Sure.
I
mean, well, those are fossils, but yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. I got you.
So.
I mean, Africa's a big place. There's a lot of mystery. I mean, I still think there are huge swaths of the world that we don't know. And maybe that's me being very... What's the word I'm looking for? Me being very narrow-minded, because I live in just my own little bubble of the world, and I'm not out there, and I just have my ideas of... But Africa's a huge continent, and there's a lot there, and there's so much that we don't know here in the States. So, is it possible? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be realistic, it's possible that the people that built the lost city of Zinj, if it ever existed, actually bred white apes to serve them as guards. That is theoretically possible. Is it true? Highly doubtful. Although Michael Crichton made a heck of a novel based off of it. So theoretically, its world's a big place, and something like this could exist somewhere.
Sure.
There's great parts of South America that we've not been in. I mean, They find Africa is second or third in discovery of new creatures, but first is South America, because in the Amazon basin a lot of stuff evolves because it's sort of like a hot genetic soup.
There's a mental picture for you.
But so, is it possible something like this still roams around? Yeah. Is it still roaming around Africa? It's harder for me to say, because you would think Google Maps, for instance, is satellite picture. You'd think you'd notice a 35-meter long hunk of trees moving. Even if it's brown and green and blends in, you'd see the movement, I think.
Maybe.
So, but I certainly think if it doesn't exist any longer, it did once upon a time.
Fair enough. So,
what do you?
That was my final thoughts.
Oh, okay. Well,
then that brings us to
the end of our show. Yeah. Thanks for listening, as always. Sorry Krysta didn't do more this week. She really was not feeling her best, and so sometimes you got to let the kid have a break.
If we must.
If we must. So, one thing that I don't talk about often, but I want to start, is our Facebook group. Feel free to join that. We're starting to get lots of active people in there. In fact, our friend and former guest on the show, Sheila, has about half her family in there. And
Nice.
Yeah, so the Grimm Ericksons are cool people. Talk to them. Join our Facebook group. Also, thanks to Bill Barrett for our theme music. Bill is a musician, so hey, if you need music for a project, if you need someone to work a wedding, Bill's probably your guy. You can reach him at Bill Berendt, BEHRENDT, at sbcglobal.net. He also does a podcast called Rusty and Dusty, although he may be off of that for a minute, because whichever one isn't him was recently in a motorcycle accident.
Oh dear.
So they may not have any new episodes coming out immediately.
Best of health and care to them. That's always rough.
Yep. Thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie True Crime, who, along with Krysta, did our logo art.
And it's not the same, but thank you, Paige.
It's not the same. No, but thank you. Also, as I said, she does host the Reverie Crime podcast. And if you were looking for a true crime podcast, it's a good one. Yeah, she's good.
Absolutely.
Also want to say thanks to Aaron Gnerk of the Big Dumb Fun Show, continues to promote us locally. Thank you, Aaron. Now, we will most likely have Cheryl. I don't know if Darren will be joining us, but Cheryl Holland of the Holland Project group, who are some musicians who make some amazing music. Cheryl may be joining us as a special guest to help us look into local spiritualist J.H. Mott. Yes, and track down the truth about his interesting and perhaps nefarious individual. We will also be celebrating our 150th episode.
Wow, that's a long time. That's a big number.
Yep, and Krysta will do her catching up with Krysta, so it's going to be a big show, a very big show. Or as Ed Sullivan used to say, a very big shoe.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for this week, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.